All right, guys.
All right, let's do it.
So we're jumping into overtime, following 90,000 Work series, which turned out to be a pretty awesome series. I heard from a lot of people that it was very beneficial. They're leaning in. And also I got the comment from a lot of folks that said, like, we should do this more often. And so that's something you and I talked about.
Like do more guest speakers?
Talk about this topic more often.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it was cool to just hear, like, oh, okay, maybe once a year we need to hit on work in some capacity, one-off, a two-parter or something.
People are working.
Yeah, it's a giant, that's the whole concept, right? Yeah. 90,000 hours you spend at work, so we should talk about it. I wanted to ask y'all, because I think we all probably have them, if you would share, to kick our time off, a first job. There's kind of a broad lane. Okay. Your first job, or like a funny or just embarrassing job moment, whatever would be the most comical in that category.
Oh, whichever one is the most comical.
Yeah, whether it's what you did for your first job, or maybe it's just a different job, but it's funny or embarrassing. Okay. Yeah, I really want to just start with the most self-deprecating thing you have related to vocation.
I worked for a church. I'm just No, my first job, this isn't super self-deprecating, but I can't believe I did it. You guys know timeshares? Like, you know what timeshares are? You know those people that are like in the mall or in a theme park and like try and get you to sign up to go for a tour of a timeshare? You know those people? Yeah. That's my first job.
Really?
I was at Opryland Theme Park in Nashville, and we had a little booth, and I tried to talk you into, I would give you Grand Ole Opry tickets or give you a couple other things if you would come and tour, if you were a tourist and you would come and tour our timeshare.
That sounds like something you would hate.
I did hate it.
Okay.
But my mom worked for them.
How old were you?
16, 17.
Okay.
I mean, I babysat. I think that's almost, like, that's a lot of.
Yeah.
How long did you do the selling thing?
I don't remember. Maybe a year and a half or 2 years. I think it was like it was the end of high school.
Did you like any part of it?
No, not, well, I mean, I didn't really do it well, but no one's really there watching you, so they don't know what you're doing.
Oh, that sounds miserable.
Yeah, it was bad.
I didn't like that.
No telling how many people's financial lives I ruined. That's mine.
What about y'all?
Mine is it's so embarrassing and funny. My first job interview I'm out of college and I'm just applying like crazy. Like, just anybody that'll give me an interview, I'm going. The first one I got was with State Farm. I was like, oh, this is great. So I go in and the interviewer says, introduces himself, and he's like, so do you know what we do? I'm like, insurance. That's it. That's all I knew. Immediate panic. Then I start coughing.
What?
I am coughing and I cannot stop. Never happened in my life except there. So he goes and gets me water. He gives me water. I can't pull it together at all. And he like literally just shows me to the door, and I leave.
My gosh. You never actually have any more conversation.
No, that was it. Me saying
that's
insurance,
terrible.
and I don't know anything more than insurance, and let me have a coughing attack so you can escort me out.
Kristi, his life has been worse since then. Just want you to know.
No.
His loss.
No, he's got a great story. He's like, there was this chick that one
he
time.
tells that story all the time.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yes.
He's like, hey, you killed this interview compared to.
Yes.
Yep.
So note to self, if anyone goes for a job interview, make sure you know what the company does and take water.
Well, I would have said insurance.
And but
you need to know more.
Correct. Yeah. Research the company.
Okay.
No specifics.
Noted.
Not just insurance and then a cough.
When my first job, when I was 5, I sold books to my parents for $1. So I'd probably be number one.
Did they actually buy them?
Oh yeah, they'd come in my room. I'd open the door. They'd come in, do a tour, buy some books. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cute.
Some like stick figure dinosaurs and some really good stuff. So
that's really sweet. I like that.
Yeah, kettle corn was always fun. I don't know if I'd like more I was more making fun of other people.
I was gonna share too, actually, from that.
I'll let you share that.
Okay.
Fitness 19. I worked at a gym for 3-4 years, like last 3 years of high school, first year of college. There's a lot of interesting stuff there. I shared some of those from stage, I think, because we had a 2-way mirror, and that was like in the middle of the gym. So, yeah, it was not good. I mean, we just make fun of people all the time. It wasn't my greatest days, but just kind of fell into the culture there. It's wonderful. But I mean, you clean up a lot of, you're cleaning up the debris and blood and sweat and.
Oh.
No.
I mean, cleaning ladies' restrooms, didn't even know that there were different things in there that I had to go clean out.
So my first thought was like, there's not different things in ours, there's different things in yours.
Right.
Yeah. They're like, oh, I'm like 15, and I'm like, oh, okay. So I don't know.
Oh,
that
Jordan.
was a fun time. I did train some people. I did because the personal trainers wouldn't show up sometimes, and so I would just
Oh my
walk
gosh.
people around the gym,
Stop.
pick out a machine, and tell them to do some reps.
Is this gym still around and open?
No.
Okay.
No, definitely not.
No, I didn't make it.
Yours was kettle corn though, right? Because you shared that.
Yeah,
Was that
yeah.
your first job ever?
That's been my only other job apart from Northpoint.
Oh, okay.
Has been working kettle corn for the family. I when I was did Taekwondo growing up, I taught a little bit of that but it was more just like a class here and there or lesson here and there. But kettle corn was fun. I think I shared some self-depreciating things about that already from stage. So I'll share more like funny things about others, because you would get the funniest orders from people sometimes. I mean, picture.
How do you get a
complicated is it to
yeah,
order
it's just I want kettle corn.
well, picture like Pecan Street Festival, and it's like late or really early in the morning, and people are drunk.
Okay.
And they're coming up, and they're asking questions like, "How much is the $5 bag?"
Stop.
Not
Like
even
a
kidding.
frequent question.
Yeah, yeah.
What?
You'd be
A couple
you'd be
times
surprised.
a day at least. It was like
You'd be surprised.
No, well, wait a minute. Do they mean like how
That-
much popcorn do I get with
Right,
the $5 bag?
No, they were asking how much it cost.
No.
They're on
it.
display. You know how much is and then you'd upcharge them $8 for you.
Did you do that ever? And did it work?
No, I didn't do that.
That would have been
I
hilarious.
totally, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Yeah. The other one that was always good. So I think Grayson's confused about how to say strawberry and lemonade, because ever since this happened, I've always said it this way. But a lady came up and she said, I'd like to have some Starberry lemonade. And so ever since then, I've been like, Starberry lemonade. That's how you say it. That's what you do. So there were many. There's like this whole culture of people who work together, like trading food behind the scenes too. And, you know, I some of the stories I shouldn't share on a church podcast. Like, guys, I'll just share this one.
No.
I'm like, what kind of world
We
is
can-
this?
I was like 15 working South by, and I think my parents were off like connecting with other vendors or something like that. And this guy comes up to me with his girlfriend, and he says the vendors all have their own porta potty, and there's lines everywhere. And he says, "Hey, $20 if we can use your porta potty." And I'm like, "Sure." And so I take $20. But then him and his girlfriend go in there together
No.
for about 10 minutes and then come out. And I said, oh, that's what the
my
$20
gosh.
was for. So,
You're assuming.
Right.
yeah. So, anyways, we can cut that out
Oh
if we
my
need
gosh.
to.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
That one's on the edge.
Back
That
to the
one's-
content from the church.
Yep.
Okay,
And
but wait, the kettle corn
I'm not
thing,
looking for a
y'all-
new job.
How long did y'all two work I'm assuming you were with him.
I was just like part of a large group of friends that would get like calls when they needed help.
Okay.
So
Yep.
I didn't
Like, just
like
for
work
big
as many
festivals
as
and
him,
stuff,
but
yeah.
Yeah, we
you
would
know,
need like 8 people in the tent for big ones or something like that. So,
yeah.
Gotcha.
But yeah,
Oh my
you
gosh.
Make it in there. It's hot. Like,
Oh,
like
I bet that
oils
was a
laying on
hard
your
job.
arms
Like
and
that's
stuff.
like hot as
well, I shared. I mean, it taught me a lot
Yeah.
about working hard. It was very, very difficult. And it was before we had the automatic stir was the hardest part, because, I mean, you'd get
Yeah.
just burned like crazy on your arms and your face. And it would go down a kernel, like a boiling kernel would go down your shirt, and it would just leave a line burned down your shirt.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's awful.
Kids these
We need
days
to
will
have-
never know.
Yeah.
You know, I see the trailer like once a week because
Yeah, it
it's-
goes up like Ronald Reagan sometimes and
Yeah,
stuff.
and I think they do the market days because
Oh,
it's
yes,
like the
they
exact
do.
same. So and
'Cause
that's
my
once
dad
a
used
month
to
in
do that.
Georgetown. So
Yeah.
yeah, we'll walk over and it's like.
So
the
your parents
corner.
sold it?
Yeah, so my parents live in Durango now. We're outside of Durango, Colorado. And my dad, they sold it a couple years ago, and then my dad actually just opened up a popcorn shop in Main Street in Durango. So if you're in Durango and you
That's
find
cool.
Durango Gourmet Popcorn, that's my dad's shop.
That makes me want to go.
I know.
Yep.
Let's go.
Yep.
That would be so fun.
Yep.
Jen's like, absolutely not. Do you travel with people or like just,
That's
depends.
another podcast.
And for saying that, I get 50%
Okay.
of all the profit they get if you mention my name. So I'm
Okay.
kidding.
Is that
I
real?
don't know.
We'll do that.
No.
50% of a $5 bag.
How much is that?
Yeah.
It'd be hard to plan a trip with someone. You'd have to know you're still going to be friends by the time the trip comes around. That's a gamble, right?
Yeah, well, there's a whole set of conversation. I think the only child part of me really kicks in
Oh,
sometimes
that
in those
makes sense,
moments
yeah.
of like as we've traveled with people before and they're like, oh, let's all share a room. I'm like,
But see, that's the
or
thing.
we
Like,
could not.
you got to travel with people that you're comfortable enough to say, which you could with me,
Yes,
and I
you
could
could
with you.
be like,
you could say,
I'm
like,
not
Jen,
sharing a room.
Love you, but I'm.
Yeah,
need
we
my
traveled with the
space.
Fergusons one time. She was trying to share everything, and I texted, like, it's too much sharing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to share groceries. Like, I just don't. I can't right
Yeah.
now. That's a whole other conversation. But anyway,
So speaking of traveling with friends,
Oh, okay.
let's talk about work.
Okay.
So we began a series, 90,000. We've been talking about how we invest our 90,000 hours in a way that matters because we all want to experience work that matters. We don't want to live our 90,000 hours in such a way that we just kind of checked the box and made it through. And we don't want to, living for the weekend is a fun thing to talk about, but it's not really how we want to live. Like, we want to enjoy life Monday through Friday as well, right? So there's a lot of different ways we approach this topic, talked about what purpose in work is as defined by God, talked about both in Genesis and in the New Testament from the Apostle Paul, what it means when you get stuck at work, what it means to see work as an exciting adventure to pursue, what greatness looks like at work with Wade Lombard sharing with us, and then talked about, some of the things that matter more than work as well. So work matters, but there are things that matter more. And it's in my conversations as I've talked to people in this series, I've just noticed that people have gone, oh man, that piece was really helpful for me. And that's one of the hopes with it, was that it's such a broad topic for so many people in so many different situations, is how could we span over 5 parts a way to connect with everybody wherever they are vocationally. And so I just wanted to start off and, one, allow our listeners to get to know y'all a little bit and share both what you currently do and then how you maybe took something away from this series, or what maybe piece you pulled from this series.
Well, it was really interesting timing for me. I was sharing this with you, like, coming back, because it was the part 1 was my first week of paternity. So this was like, I was off of work for those 3 weeks, which is like the longest stretch. I haven't worked at it something since I was 15 years old, so I'm like home, not sure if I ever want to go back to work, kind of like disoriented, sleep deprived, all that. And so I like catch up on the series the weekend before I come back in. And then, my first like full week back is that part 5 and everything. So it was this kind of like cool perspective of, I think even how this conversation changes when you're maybe like single, exploring a career, figuring out what you want to do, those college years, versus like now with the family, like it has a whole kind of different perspective, motivation. It's a little further down the list of priorities for me. And yet at the same time, I almost feel like I'm more disciplined or efficient or intentional as a result or something like that, I've been a parent for 6 weeks. I'm just saying, like marriage and all that starts to build like, some of that different perspective. So for me, like your part 5, Jeremy, with like seeing the list and seeing work as like number 7 priority. And, I was thinking about trying to like, fit all this like back into this schedule and this new readjustment and everything. It was like, it was a really cool time. Like it was a really cool to listen to that. Not with like maybe 20 years of regret or something. And I think you did a great job of articulating too, if you have that regret, what it looks like for hope for the future and to kind of build on that. And, but for me, I'm like, man, I couldn't think of a better time to figure out how to try to stack rank, prioritize those orders. It just felt so practical for me. So I think that was really cool. I really liked throughout the series. You hit on it. Wade hit on it. Just this idea of like, it's easy for me because I actually didn't lead and clarify with that, but the fact that I work here at Northpoint, as the associate pastor, there's definitely that ministry thing where like the lines get very like blurry between your personal relationship with God and what is work, and like is all my work for God, or actually you can do like none of it for, because you're just like checking the boxes. So it was like just a really good kind of centering perspective. That part 1, you talking about work matters because of who you work for. And that was just like, man, how do I like, especially over a long time, been here 10 years now, figure out how to make that a regular rhythm of my life, reminder of my life, kind of North Star of why I work. And the other one I noted, just, small, and I don't have to talk this whole time, but I really liked when you talked about the assumptions we make about other people's jobs. I just thought that was brilliant, because I was like, I think that happens everywhere, every industry, every like,
job,
and both a grass is greener effect, or they don't work that hard effect. It can be all the things in between, and that was just like a great like insight. Like, man, if we just ask questions and ask what people's pain points are, struggles, we probably realize we have a whole lot in common, and also respect each other more too. So I thought that was a great insight.
That is good.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I liked, kind of going off yours too, it kind of stuck with me was inviting people, like don't do, like work for some reason is always seems to be the part that I think for me, well, not now that I work in a church, but prior to this, like that's the last thing that you go to God with. And it feels like, and in others, you kind of think you have to figure out things on your own. So I really liked, and several of the messages kind of went back to not just inviting God in, but inviting other people into your decisions, and not just, you know, whether you stay or go, but like things you're doing at work, you know? And so that really stuck with me. Like, yeah, that's a really important part. You can't make good decisions alone most of the time. And
it's far more difficult.
Yeah, it really is. And I can think back on choices that I made, like going to a job or, you know, taking on another responsibility or leaving a job without talking to anybody about it. And, you know, think, gosh, especially in my younger years, I wish I would have leaned on people wiser than me that had some experience that could share that, and instead of just making the decisions by myself. So I really liked that. And then the reminder of, like, why are you working? You know, and I think we can say that, you know, our family is a priority or fill in the blank is a priority, but if that's not how you're living your life, you know, like Bill said, you showed the clip from the Story 512 episode, and he was, you know, this very successful, wealthy businessman, and who's recently retired, and his biggest regret was he missed his kids growing up. And you think how common that is, that and it's never too late. And I love that he said that. So it's this redemption of it's never too late, but, you know, remember why you're working. So I think a lot of us say to provide for our family or to be a good role model to our kids. But at the end of the day, if we're not available and we're not there, that's what they need. It's not the money or the modeling hard work. It's you know, our presence.
Yeah, I've heard people say, and I don't know if we ever said it this way, but people want or kids want a home, not a house. You know? Yes. And like oftentimes we're working to like for the walls of the house, but what they really need is a home.
Yep.
And their parents' time and all that.
Yeah, there's a whole correlation, and like, well, that's a whole other conversation. For me, sorry. Well, I was just thinking about like how our houses have changed over time.
Oh, yeah.
How our work has changed, and how our families have changed. And that if you just kind of look at that as data points together, it's like, okay, there's something more. The bigger our houses get, you know.
Yep.
The more.
We just had a guy in our CG sharing that last night because he said that they're downsizing because they can all be in a different room and like not even hear one another.
Yep. Everybody's got their own bathroom now. Like it's not a you know, it's not the same.
Yep.
For me, it was kind of funny because so I showed the picture of my work team the Sunday that I was there with the panel, and then but it was kind of misleading because that Friday before, literally it was cut in half, and half those people in that picture are no longer on our team. So
you said that backstage, and I was like, I don't think
kind of
anybody's gonna know.
But it was too late because I'd already sent it in. So but it was one of those things of like, I think a big reminder for me was that just work comes in seasons too. And there are going to be seasons because I'm in the middle of I don't work here. And I'm in the middle of a work transition with my boss retiring. Half our team has changed. It looks like other changes on the horizon. And I'm like, that just changed. The whole culture's changed. We're a small team, you know, so everything shifts when you have top level leadership shift. Like the trickle down just happens. And so I'm just in a season of like, okay, and trying to give myself space to be patient in that season of like,
just to kind of see what happens.
Yeah, just see what happens. Because I rush to like, okay, this is or isn't working, and I need to do this tomorrow. But inviting people into that conversation of like, hey, and not closing doors to conversations, but not like prying doors open and like just waiting and see what kind of happens. And that's actually not as long as in my mind knows, like just give it a few months and then you can evaluate. But my like anxiousness just really wants to know how this is going to work out and land. End of story. And I want to know it yesterday.
Yep.
So it was just a good reminder for me to be patient and just trust.
Yep. Yeah, it's like Angie said, the whole, I don't know how she phrased it. It was so good, but she said, I know what she was saying is be still.
Yeah.
How did she say that?
Dang it.
I'm saying it because it was so sticky, but I can't remember
good.
it. So it disproves. Or maybe instead of saying I'm stuck, it's like choose to be still.
Yes, that's what it was.
Choose to be still instead of stuck.
Maybe you're not actually stuck. You just need to be still.
Yep. Yeah, that kind of thing. Which is really cool.
That's it.
For me, you know, I would say it's bizarre. The entire series was a takeaway for me because it was so much of a lot less of like sitting in the seats and listening and more of the prep process behind the scenes of, okay, here's this felt need for people. Okay, I know God speaks into this because God cares about the details of our life. What does God say, and how can we formulate this in such a way that's helpful for people in a broad demographic of vocations and jobs and people and ages and all the things? And so just that prep process for me like really solidified, I think, getting into ministry, working here at Northpoint as content director, but playing different roles under the same umbrella for years, for the first chunk of my life in ministry, it was really working for God. Like, I'm doing this to please God. God is happy with me when I do well in ministry, you know. And I was just new in my faith and younger than I am now, to where it's like, that's just how I thought. And it took some refinement that God did in my life to get to a point where I'm not there. And I think when you take that away, then you go, well, then why do I do this? Because, you know, what motivator needs to get put in place of that to drive me to be really good with my work, if it's not that I'm like doing it for some identity with God. And this series, a lot of ways, solidified, I think, a journey that I've been on for a long time, to just go like, when I get to serve people through what I do every day, I just get to bring good to the world. And I just get to work diligently, work with all of my heart. And regardless of what the outcome is or what I'm doing, like, that's a beautiful thing. And so that's made me just rethink the way I approach work every day, you know, of just, I want to give things my all, because it's honoring to people and it's honoring to God, you know. So it's been one of my biggest takeaways from this prep process.
It was hard to like come down, you know, to just a couple of things, because there were so many good takeaways from this series. So yeah.
And in the one of the biggest takeaways in the learnings, the teaching, and this was kind of with Wade's too, is I listened to another guy, he did a whole teaching on work, and listened to all of his stuff, and he had this story that he shared about this Starbucks manager who came in and completely wrecked his paradigm with how he approached his job, because he just thought, this job is stupid. I make coffee for these people so that they can go work their jobs, and they spend $10 every morning on their coffee drink. And this manager came in, and she said, hey, you don't serve coffee, you serve people. And I was like, oh my gosh, how many people need to hear that? Whatever they do, they don't do that. They're doing it for people. And if people are made in the image of God, then everything that we do is contributing to people. And that's a beautiful thing. So thought that was pretty cool too.
That's good.
So one of the topics we didn't get to hit on, we just didn't have enough time. We didn't feel like we should expand it into a 6-part series, and Easter's coming around. So scheduling things happen, and we couldn't fit it in.
Got to talk about Easter.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Just the epicenter of our faith. But is this question that a lot of people wrestle with of, what should I do? Like, whether I'm dissatisfied with my job, or I'm in transition, or I'm beginning my journey. I think about the job fairs, or I think I remember being in middle school, and I was like sitting down reading I don't know, on a computer screen. I don't know if you remember this at Henry, but it was like all these different categories of work. And it's like, I'm supposed to pick one out right now. I'm in middle school, I'm in middle school. But I think we wrestle with that question of, what do we do, right? How would you guys say, for people listening that are going, what should I do for a living? If I can choose, what should how do I answer that question?
I'm not sure if this is like a personality thing. I do think there's layers of it, of like, some people will need more direction than others. And some people will need less. Like my husband, when he was like in high school, had no clue on what do you want to do? What do you want to do? Where do you want to go to school? He's like, I don't know. So he happened to be close with like the guidance counselor. And she was like, hey, you've got good math scores. What about business or math? And he's like, okay. And she was like, where do you want to go? He's like, I don't know. He's like, well, she's like, well, I went to this school. It was pretty good. Or I never heard this. They've got a good business program. He was okay. And like literally she picked his career path, which he is still in today, because his temperament is just like, he's just like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And I think so, watching him and then watching my own career journey, I would answer that question more of like, just get less focused on what you should do and get way intentional about how you are doing it, and just start trying. Like, just experiment. I think that I can remember working on my resume one time. I had just finished grad school, and I didn't know if I was going to get hired full time where I was. I kind of knew it was going to happen, but I didn't want to assume. So I'm like working on my resume. My mentor comes in and she's like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm working on a resume, but I'm frustrated with it. And she's like, why? I said, because my last job, I only had 6 years there, and I feel like you should have 10, 20 years on your resume. And she was like, that's ridiculous. She's like, that's not how life works. She's like, go, and like, it's fine if you have 3 years here and 6. And I felt like that was irresponsible. And it's funny because I ended up working at that place for 12 years, but it was something in my brain that made me worry less about, it was like, just step into the door that's open. And when that door needs to close, if you get super cheesy, right? But if you can just stay in tune with God, you'll feel those nudges. So I think it's less about, how do I know what to do? Because I get that question a ton. How do I know what I'm supposed to do? Well, just start doing things and doing things well, and opportunity will unfold. I've never picked my job. I brushed up my resume the other day, and I was like, I've not done this in a gazillion years. A gazillion years. Because it's just always made sense in that moment.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes we get wrapped up in I need to know and have a path and a plan. And it's more like, go do this for 6 months. If it doesn't work, we're fine.
Yeah.
You're fine.
Yep.
Go try making coffee for 6 months. Then go try helping over here for 6 months, or see a need, fill a need, and just start walking in that direction.
Yeah.
Rather than like, I need to find out what I want to do and I have to do it for all of eternity.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a bias for action, right? Like it's not getting stuck in paralysis and analysis, and it's like just going.
Yeah, just go
doing
do.
something and seeing. And that's a big faith component too, of trusting God, of going, I'm just going to pursue this door and see where it leads me.
Yes.
And God, would you reveal something to me maybe I didn't know yet?
Well, and I think question the rules that you've got in your head. Like I had rules that you have to work somewhere forever, or you were irresponsible, or you were a job hopper. And I have to just question those rules. It doesn't mean that they're not still valid for you in that season. Maybe you do need to take, I mean, if you're literally getting a different job every 2 years, that may be worth the conversation with you and God. But like question the mantras you've got, the things that you've always been told about work, and just at least bring them to God to ask, so is this from someone else or is this from you?
Yeah. Yeah, that's
I think
great.
things have changed though too. I think those of us that are older, like we stayed at jobs.
Yeah, culture
Like,
has changed.
you know,
Yes.
Yeah, and now it's like my headphones are gonna fall off. Sorry, Josh. So I think it's different now. Like I think it's not frowned upon to, like, to your point, go try something. Like, what are your interests? And I think early on in my career, or for anyone, I would say, you know, what naturally comes to you? What excites you when you hear about it? What are those interests? Because you don't know, you don't have an experience yet. So I think you go and you, like, what interests you? Like, what kind of excites you when you even hear the thought of it? And then I think as you get older, what you kind of figure out what matters to you and how important the people are in the job.
Yes.
So, like, you know, you have this idea of a dream job, but the people that are around you matter more than I think than that job. So
and the culture of whatever company, organization,
100%.
business, yeah.
And so the later part of my life, I made decisions based on the culture and the environment and the people, knowing that my skills could be applied there rather than I want to be this job and I don't care the environment.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. I mean, I think I could do pretty much anything
Yes.
if I really enjoy my team. We could make some bagels or I don't know.
Well,
Or
and
popcorn,
that's
kettle corn.
the relationships that you build too. That's why you don't have to go look for another job.
Yeah.
Is that you're sought after, or somebody goes and they take you with them, you know, versus going somewhere where that relational component is not there.
What's that phrase that people don't leave jobs, they leave bosses?
Yeah.
Like they don't actually quit
Yep.
the work, they quit
I
the
agree
people.
with that. I mean,
I agree too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you? I wanna throw a phrase out there, and I want to get like a agree or disagree.
Okay,
And,
thumbs up or thumbs down?
Yeah, this is
Okay, I'm ready.
ad hoc. Do something you love, and you don't have to work a day in your life. Okay, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. I just wanted to like gut check. Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
for the
Oh,
people
you're listening.
listening, everybody gave a thumbs down, which
Yeah.
means disagree. But I think that's how a lot of people approach. Like,
Yes.
oh, I have to find something I love, and it's like so that I don't have to work. But that defeats the purpose of work
Right.
because then we're trying to take the hardness of work out, right? So
Yeah. There's nothing in life like that. But that'd be like, have a baby. It will always be great. Like,
that's a thumbs down. Disagree.
Because not because you shouldn't and you don't learn a ton from having your kids, but like
It's hard.
It's
hard,
hard
yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Parenting is hard work.
Yeah.
Work is work. Marriage is work. That makes it sound miserable, but it's so great.
Yeah. Higher the hike, the better the view, right?
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of depth to
That's
that.
one of my
Look
cheesy
at that.
ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. I mean, what you were saying, how things have changed. It's just, yeah, it's an interesting place in the world we live and an interesting time to live in it. You know, I mean, think even going back, is it the greatest generation? Is that when you go back before it's like any work is good work, you know?
Yeah.
That's most of human history. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it was you. Did you say it was like 90% of people have been farmers throughout history?
Yeah, prior
You
to
know, it's like-
industrialization.
yeah, you know,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
so it is an interesting time where there's, you know, work is such an idol for like so many of us that everything will be fulfilled if I find the perfect fit.
Yep.
And freedom and flexibility and, you know, pay and is it meaningful and do I work with great people? It starts to become like, man, that's like a, you know, huge big list, you know, sometimes like you're trying to find the perfect person to
Right,
date
yeah.
or marry that is like, you know, like,
Yeah.
That's a good analogy.
And we're
It
in terms of like influencers and like, you know, I do a lot of video stuff. So I often get some sort of ad that says how you can quit your job and make 6 figures in a month just
Yeah.
by doing videos.
Yeah.
You click it, don't you?
Yeah.
No, I don't. No.
Yeah.
But it's that thing. It's like of course you're going to want this because this is
Yeah.
easier than what you currently
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
You know, but you could take the meaning out of it with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like there are a couple like practical, I think especially maybe the younger somebody is like listening, you know, I think there's a book called The Defining Decade and there's a whole It's written by a counselor to 20-somethings, and it's all about why your 20s matter. And our culture is a lot of like, go find yourself, live it up, and then 30, you're too old for all the things. And it's like this kind of this lie that like culture tells you. But she talks about in there's a whole section on work, and it is about like developing skills, like this kind of coffee shop dream. I'm going to work at a coffee shop part-time and travel the world. Versus like doing something that actually is preparing you for the future, whether that's the career path you're in or not. It's an interesting kind of resource. It does feel like there's some self-awareness that, you know, if detail work really drains you and you try to go do accounting or something, you know, like there's certain levels of self-awareness that would be like, I like people, I don't, I like big teams, I like small teams, you know. And then you can just take that too far to the, you know, the extreme that I think does that become the idol that we just referenced. But then the pastoral side of me, I think, is just reiterating what you two would say. So I don't know if it adds a lot. This almost feels like a question a little bit of like, how do I discover God's will for my life? Or how, you know, and I'll talk to people a lot about even like praying for clarity. You can. I just don't know if it's the most helpful prayer. It's like, you know, praying more for peace. Like, you know, because if you knew exactly, it takes a bit of that faith, like trust element out. So it's, in my mind, it's like whatever you do, go be faithful, which is what you guys are saying. Like just go work hard at it and see like, what do you learn? Is this a good fit? What skills, what relationships? And it feels like being faithful with that next step and whatever your season you're in, like where your feet are planted right now, versus like the 60-year plan, a lot of times is a whole lot more helpful and rewarding than the other way around.
And I do think it's the skills, to your point. Like I think, you know, I remember starting out looking for a job title. Like that's what I was looking for. So I applied for all the jobs that had this title, and I majored in business and minored in human resources. And I thought, because I love people and I want to help and I want to. Well, a lot of human resources is not, it's firing people. It's doing all the things that I don't like to do. And it's also very stressful if you are recruiting and hiring people. Everybody comes to you for my brother, my uncle, my friend. It's just, it can be really draining. And so what I realized is the skill I like, the people skills are what I'm really good at. But I don't have to be in HR to do that.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I stopped looking for HR titled jobs. I started looking for jobs that I can apply my strengths in versus a title.
Well, I do think, I don't want to assume everybody actually even goes on that journey to discover their strengths. I mean, like, so I do think some of us, like, people don't, there's so many tools out there. Like literally take Working Genius stuff.
Like Working Genius by, I just want to say that.
Yeah.
Working Genius by Patrick Lencioni. I think it's like a $12 assessment. And I've recently found it to be extremely helpful, even as I just think about my job. And, oh yeah, that gives me life and that doesn't. And
and it makes sense why this irritates you and drains you and why this actually and why you enjoy this, but someone else doesn't. Someone else sees that as like, so frustrating. Barna's Strengths, Clifton. No, it's Clifton Strengths Finders.
Strengths Finders.
That's another good one. I mean, like, there's so many good tools out there. So I think because I know Northpoint as a culture really does look at that and weave that in, but I don't want to assume everybody listening does. Like that, like, so it's like a little bit of like, hey, just go experiment and work hard and show up as your full self, and then figure out and learn your full self more, and then kind of start looking in those directions. Like, I like people, but I don't want to fire people and I don't want to deal with all that stuff, you know?
Yep. Wade had this cool analogy. I don't know if he shared it in his teaching. Did he talk about the thing at the airports that you walk on?
He
did talk about it?
Yeah.
Okay, then I told him when I first heard him share that, was on like a YouTube video, and I went and looked up like, what is that thing called? It's called a travelator.
Yeah.
I don't know if y'all know this.
It's called a people mover.
It's called a
I always call it a
travelator.
people mover too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
But yeah, whatever your travelator is, where you're walking the same pace, but you're moving a lot faster, and it's just easy for you. Like that's a very just helpful, practical thing to do.
Yep.
And then if you can find a job that does work for that, that's awesome, right? But you can still find meaning even if you're not in a job that is necessarily checking all those boxes in your current season as well.
Yeah. And there may be seasons that work just kind of sucks. And that's okay.
Yep.
You know, but like kind of checking yourself in that and seeing maybe where, you know, God wants to guide you in that.
Yeah. I was just thinking about like Jesus said, like, I've come to, you know, bring life and you can have to the full. Like, he never said, I've come so you can have life and maybe your job will give you the fullness of life I'm offering you. You know, like it's, you know, I offer you the fullness of life, and work is just something you do. And here's an aspect of that.
Yeah. And everybody, when we read scripture, they're all working at the same time. We just don't look at it that way.
Yep. So good. And then the last practical question, I thought, Jordan, I thought you were going to share this one, but when you can align your job with something that you're passionate about, like the question of what breaks your heart is just a great question. We talk about that a lot here at Northpoint. It's another one of those maybe normalized. But for somebody who's never thought about what breaks your heart, like that's a great question. Like, do kids break your heart? Well, then maybe something, or does the city, maybe working at a nonprofit, there's all sorts of paths that can lead you down that are really big. So
and don't compare what breaks your heart, because I think we feel a pressure of like, oh, I should be working for the church because I love Jesus and I like people. It's like, that doesn't mean you should be working for the church. Like, it doesn't mean you shouldn't, but it doesn't mean you should. So like, don't compare. Just really, really ask that question and like sit with it for a minute. It's a good one.
I want to drill down specifically on one demographic. We tried to keep the series broad, but for managers and leaders specific, I think you were talking about this maybe at some point, just the work, yes, our 90,000 hours is really significant. Who has the greatest impact on that? We were just talking about the people, probably your boss, right?
Yes.
And so how do we as managers, leaders, I think we've all been in managerial positions, or we currently sit in a managerial position. How do we take these things, these ideas, these concepts, and implement them in such a way that we can benefit and bring good to the 90,000 hours that we steward for other people and their families?
It's funny. I just had a meeting this past week with a guy who coaches CEOs. And so he was curious about the Enneagram as a tool with coaching CEOs. We were just having this whole conversation about it. And he's like, yeah, but when you're coaching CEOs, they're coming from a position of power. So certain tools feel more about like your feelings, and it's like, no, we got a job to get done. So it's interesting to hear his approach to even using the tools, and it also really aligned up with his personality. So I think we kind of come back to like self-awareness as a manager or a leader. Please know what it feels like to lead, be led by you. And I know we have the big question, again, part of Northpoint culture of like, what's it like on the other side of me? But to be a leader that genuinely takes the time and creates a safe space, I think you will learn more about how you're actually leading. And it will be hard for people to be honest with you. It will be hard. No matter how great you are, it will be hard. But I think knowing yourself is a huge tool for managers and leaders. And just don't assume that it's just always great and easy to work for you. There are parts of you that are not easy to work for. Everybody's got them.
Yep.
And I think that, we know the manager sets the vibe. So, you've got to model what you want your employees to do. So if you're not a safe person to go to with things, why would you feel like your employees are going to come to you with the next creative big idea or be willing to go to bat for you, kind of thing. And so I think so often managers lose sight of that because they aren't aware of their presence and the effect they have on not just their team, but the entire organization. What is that vibe that you're setting? And are you, I guess awareness is really, so many managers I think just aren't aware of, don't take the time to stop and see what am I modeling for people? If I want people to be okay making mistakes, then I have to make a mistake, own up, apologize, move on, go to the next thing, kind of thing. If I want them to have a healthy work-life balance, I have to have a healthy work-life balance. And I think it's, we've got to model those things like, hey, it's 5:00, heading home, kind of thing. Or I made a mistake. I'm not going to bury it or blame anybody. I'm just going to own up to it. And, it's all those like, what vibe are you setting? And are you modeling, a healthy working relationship? Just what are those things you're putting out there?
Yep.
Yeah, I think about, with your part one, especially if somebody is a follower of Jesus or trying to figure out what that looks like, then I'm recognizing that whatever work I do, what you're saying is like what really gives that meaning is who I'm working for. If I have an authority, if my Heavenly Father is ultimately my authority, then anytime you take on more management or more leadership, like you're modeling more and more of that servant leadership that Jesus exemplified. And I know that's not a new concept in our culture, but I do think just in a very naive way, especially just, young people, and it's normal. It's not even a critique. It's just a desire for leadership or a position for importance or affirmation or recognition, or maybe I think life will get easier. Like I'll do less, people do things for me, or in reality, like you're taking on added weight with each one of those steps. You are now the one like has to go first, lead first, apologize first. What you were just saying, you take bullets for people. You are there to protect people and care for people. You have responsibility, over the health, the environment, and so I'm just 6, 7, 8 years ago now when we read Leadership Pain together, and we were like in our early 20s on our leadership team. It's just a whole different picture of leadership than I think I had like kind of thought as a 22, 23-year-old. But I do think, if you're like, man, there's a higher purpose to my work, then it's going to radically change how you see leadership, and maybe even like be real cautious with taking it on, really weigh the scales. I love the story that you shared of the guy who, has continued to say no to promotions and so on, like understanding the weight of leadership, the demand of it, the cost that would come to his family, and just say, at this point in my life, like this stage is not worth it, and so
it takes an insane amount of self-awareness to say no to that.
Yeah.
Well, and I think not just for like what your values are, but like not all people that are good at their job are good managers. There's a very big difference. So I think so often we promote the person that's good at their job, but they're not a good manager.
You should.
Sorry.
Yeah, I want to reference a book and let Jordan explain it. But there's a book called Radical Candor by Kim Scott. I feel like everybody who leads anybody should read this book because it talks all about managing people built on a foundation of trust. And it uses this really cool language that Jordan talks about a lot. So I'll let him talk about it with that.
I think her background is like all the big ones. It's like Google, Amazon. She's like
executive levels, right?
Yeah, incredible. I love the concept of radical candor. Like the most loving thing you can do is this kind of loving honesty with people. That's what like the whole book is built on. So how do you not be a jerk, but also how do you not be like passive and not actually help and coach people before? It's a really great. But there's this section. It's more of like I think a chapter or something.
Yeah, I want to say it's like a paragraph.
Right. Maybe
and it was so
small.
profound.
Yeah, and it's just has always stuck with me. She talks about the difference between rock stars and superstars. And rock stars are people who are like so in love with the craft, so like skilled, like love the process. They're the true like musicians, whatever it may be. And we so often will take these really talented individuals and ask them to go run the department of musicians, and it kills the joy, sucks the life out of them. They never aspired to that. And it's a weird thing in our culture where we like think that's more important to go like promote them to that. And some people, that's not what they want. And she shares the story of a guy who just quit his job. He's just like, they kept trying to promote him. He's like, I'm leaving. Like I love, it was like writing code, or I love whatever it was. And you see that in people like and all the time. They just are like, they come alive. They're so good at the task or the craft, and not put a pressure on now they need to go like manage 10 people. And then
which is not the task or the craft.
It's an entirely different skill set. It's an entirely and that was just like so freeing for me, because we have done that. We have promoted rock stars, and then like it was a bad move on our part. It's not their fault. And
and I think it goes on the employer and the employee to be honest about that. Like the employee needs to say, I got to brag on this guy, which nobody can see off camera for a minute, but he has always felt to me in the category of someone who's just a rock star. Like everything he touches at Northpoint turns to gold. He creates all the media, so much of the media that we do, and he does it with such excellence. And then he's also been very honest over the years to say, like, I don't want to do like what you guys do. Like I don't want to be like the leader of the team, but I really love working on the team. And he's been so honest with that it's clarifying as we reorg things and we talk about like how we should, manage the different people we have. It's been so helpful. And I would say he's just thrived in everything he's touched because of that, because he just does such a good job at his job. So
I think managers and employees have to be aware enough and comfortable enough that has to be an environment where you can do that, where you can, have that honest conversation and say that. And you have to, we were saying about it, trust being really important, but it's also like, you have to be secure as a manager as well to, be okay with your employee being a rock star, not a superstar, or with not being threatened by them being a superstar and taking your job. One of the best managers I had, I was teaching preschool for a few years, and she came in, and instead of saying, Kristi, like this was my first year, and instead of telling me like, this might work better, or why don't you do this, she just came in and she was like, good morning, kids. And she sat down, we were doing circle time, and she sat down in the circle time and just started like leading. And I was like, that was the most like helpful way that I could watch what she's doing and learn from her without feeling like I had failed, or that, some negative thing from that. She modeled what she wanted to see happen. And I think about that. It doesn't have to be in a teaching situation, but in a meeting situation, in a one-on-one, like, just to model the behavior that you want, kind of thing, and create that trust and that healthy space that you can be honest with each other, employee and manager, and say like, these are my strengths, these are not my strengths. It's okay to say like, you know what, like I'm not really good at this. Yeah. And for someone to come alongside you instead of feeling like threatened by that.
Yeah. There's a book called Motive by Patrick Lencioni. I don't know if y'all have read it. I heard him say
Patrick fan.
Well, I think Northpoint is a big Patrick fan. All the advantage stuff that we do, all that stuff. But I heard him say on a podcast one day that it's the most important book he ever wrote in his entire life. And it's very short, but it just basically breaks down this idea that like there's only really two motives of leaders, either the leaders that do it for reward or leaders that do it for responsibility. And he said when you boil it all down, it's just those two categories. Yeah. And the leaders that really make a difference in people's lives are the ones who do it for responsibility versus reward. And I've always thought of that as I think about working for Buck specifically. Like I've worked for Buck for a really long time, and he is such in the category of a leader that is led from a place of responsibility, because he has this thing, and I think it's been instituted in all of our one-on-ones at Northpoint, called open time. And it's literally like an example of a leader leading from a place of responsibility, because open time is a space in our one-on-ones every week where he does a personal check-in, how are you doing, open time, and then we talk tactically about what we need to get on. And then the open time, though, is where he just asks all these questions. What's it like on the other side of me? Is there anything I'm doing that's bothering you? Is there anything I'm doing that's creating or inhibiting you from doing your job well? Are you not resourced well in some way? Is there anything you do differently if you were me? Is there anything in the organization you see that I don't see that would be beneficial for me to know as the leader? Like all of these questions. And he doesn't hit all of them every single time, but there's some version of this. And I know it exists. And so when something does bother me, I'm able to write it down in our doc. And then when it pops up, say, hey, you did this last week in this meeting, and it totally derailed the whole team, and it actually took away our creativity. And so I just want you to be aware, sometimes when you do that, you can tank the room. And I'll share that, and he'll go, oh my gosh, thank you so much. Like, I wasn't aware of that. That's so helpful. And I think he does that because he does it from a place of, I'm responsible for leading this org to the best of my ability, not I've got something to prove, you know. Right. And we haven't always had open time. That's definitely, I don't know, maybe 5 years old, 6 years old. Probably something like that.
Can you make sure and put those questions in the like description or whatever people look at when they look at this? Because I think as I'm listening to you say that, I think there's this feeling can be like, well, that's great because Buck works at a church. Yeah. And so Buck can have that relationship with his employees or maybe for a manager leader, you feel like I can't have that relationship with my employees, whether it's a corporate structure that keeps me, I'm afraid HR is going to get called in if I get too soft or too gushy or seem like I'm prying in someone's personal life. But almost every question you asked can easily be shared in a secular setting.
For sure.
And you may have to slow down and think about it a little bit, because I know that there are leaders and people that are like that HR is a real concern for them. Like if I am too pushy or it feels like I'm going down a direction of asking too many questions about someone's personal life, that I could, but I think those questions would be great if you're looking to if you are managing or leading someone and you're like, I want my faith to come more into my leadership. Those questions, even just starting there, does something different.
Yep.
Keith has done that for years with his employee, my husband. He's done that for years. And I remember him saying at one point, he said, because I'd asked him that, I'm like, are you worried about, like when you ask some of those questions in a corporate setting? And he was like, no, it's worth the risk to figure out how my people are doing and what I'm doing that could be hindering them. And he's done it for years, and I do think you can apply it. I think people are afraid to apply it outside of a situation, like a church or something like that. But it absolutely is critical.
And I do have to clarify too, like Buck and I, relationship is much more mentor-mentee, and so like we spend a lot more time on the personal front. In the same way, you'd have an older person that you'd meet with for coffee. Like that's like half of our one-on-one. And so that is not always true in a corporate setting. So, in a corporate setting that intense of a relationship and personal check-in and all that kind of stuff probably does, create some tension for people.
Yeah, but I think we can, I don't know. I mean, it's so much, I've always worked for churches, or the nonprofit I work for right now is faith-based. So
it's so situational, right?
I know it's easy for me to say, I think you can stretch into that more, but I think there's more of it than we think. Like I think that there's some space, and I understand our hindrances, but I think we could try.
I wish everybody would. I wish every manager would set that kind of vibe where it's, because otherwise, like, you're operating out of, like, it's really not truth all the time, because, like, it was so hard for me to when I started working here in our one-on-ones for that part of the one-on-one. And I would tell Jordan, I was like, it feels weird when you ask me, like, how I'm doing. Like, I don't really, because in corporate, you don't say, like, my kid, I'm having a hard time with my kid, or, whatever. And then, to go further and say, is there anything I'm doing in corporate? Heck, I would never say, like, yeah, you're doing this. But this is, it totally can work in corporate if you're a healthy enough manager that you're willing to do that. But I think that, gosh, why wouldn't you? Like, what a healthy, productive team you could have if people all felt safe and all felt heard, and you were self-aware enough to know if you were causing any obstacles.
Yeah.
I bet it'd change your turnover rate.
Oh, for sure.
For sure. Yep. It's good.
So you're going to post those in there, right?
Yes, I can post those in there and find those. I think the conclusion that I would say to, like, somebody listening going, okay, we just dropped like 5 books and all these questions and all these things.
There were so many more books I'm thinking.
Yeah. What I would say for a leader or manager is trying to figure out how to approach work with these concepts is, like, you're not just leading employees, you're leading people. And like the fabric of the team you lead is based all around trust. And how well do you trust one another?
Yes. Right.
And these are concepts from everything that we just said. And there's a lot of different ways in which you can work to build trust within that team. And there's a lot of proof that would say that's not just wishy-washy stuff that from churches. There's a lot of corporate proof that would say you actually become far more productive and effective in what you're trying to do by building trust within a team.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yep. Awesome. We'll read all the Patrick Lencioni books if you want more
all
on
of
that.
them.
Yeah. And Radical Candor, Kim Scott. I want to end our time with one last question, and it's one we didn't have time to get into in the series as well, but specific to Jesus followers and how we think about our job and showing up at work. When Jesus said, go to the ends of the earth, baptize, make disciples, sharing the gospel, how do we do that in our day job? What does that look like? And how do we not be weird? And why should we care?
Well, we should care because of who we work for. That's why we should care. We should also care because the person across from us is a human just like we are. I really feel like it's the way we behave more than it's like, what are we showing people? How are we responding to how are we carrying ourselves? So it's like one of those, like our 5 commitments here. It's like doing that at work. It's like operating with integrity. It's, believing the best in people. So I think it's taking all of those, like remembering who we work for, what makes us different because of that, and then living that out. You don't have to leave a Bible on your desk or, to your point, be playing Christian music or like giving people scripture. And sure, if people want to ask you those questions, be open to that. But I think it's like parenting, it's like model and behave in a way that you want your child or your team to behave. And I think that's the difference maker is, you look at work, you're living out what your values are. You're modeling the balance. You're modeling integrity. You're modeling humility. You're modeling, intention. And those are the things I think that really set you apart and make people ask, like, what's different about her? What's going on with her? Why can she always be, this way? Or I'm feeling different about, I feel safe with this person. Well, why? Because I know that she believes the best. I know she's operating with integrity. I know that I can be safe in saying these things. So I don't think it's that you have to wear a big, cross necklace or have the Bible out. I think it's carrying out the values that you believe because you remember who you work for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like one of the big things that we're like fighting against at a macro level always is like trying to not have people compartmentalize their faith into like one chunk of their life. Like that's the whole old school legalistic thinking, as I've got these boxes to check and we're constantly hitting the drumbeat. It's why we're talking about serving this week and getting in groups and all this, like Christianity, the concept of it being reduced to like an hour, even if you're a consistent church attender, 1 hour a week on a Sunday would be like mind-boggling to any writer of the New Testament. It's just so not what was envisioned. And so this is a way of life. This is how we treat people. This is how we engage, love, and serve people. And so, my first thought is it's like if you don't see your work as a ministry, not in terms of like I'm coming in with my invite cards or my Bible verses, but in terms of like people to love and serve, then like please don't invite them to church. Like, please don't post. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, if you are a jerk 90,000 hours and then they like see your Facebook post, come to my Easter service, like, at least don't invite them here. Yeah. Like, I don't know. Like, it's like, that's how I feel, I think it's like you're building trust and relationship from an authentic place, not with people who are projects. But with, and then it's like in the moments it happens, it's like a cumulative effect over time. Something happens in somebody's life. They lose that job. They go through a divorce. They go through and they reach out. Hey, you were always great to me. Hey, you were always a safe space. Hey, I think you go to church. Like the number of times I've heard that, like I just don't know anybody who does, so I'm going to try you. Yeah. Kristi, you're that person for so many people. It's just extraordinary. But it's just like that model or approach to me seems like the starting point, and that's why we work hard. It's why we reply to email timely. It's why it's like all the things that would be like just normal work functions is building that character and trust because of who you're inspired by and who you're working for. And I don't know, I can talk too long. I don't mean that doesn't mean ever share the gospel. I'm sure HR at work, but outside of work or whatever. It doesn't mean like don't also be intentional. It's important to you. Of course you talk about it. You're excited about it, but it has to be in tandem with like your life or it's going to fall on deaf ears. So
And I think the unfortunate thing about that though, is I think the people that are acting like jerks during the week and then inviting you to Easter service aren't self-aware enough to realize that they're jerks. I mean, you're not, because I think when you're like, the reason you can live that out is because you're aware, like, you know who you are, you know your, shortcomings, and you're okay with that. And so your behavior is like that all the time. Like you're the same whether you're at work or at church or, out. The people I think that aren't struggle with, it's the awareness part, it's just like you think I go to church, I'm a Christian. There's a lot more that makes you a Christian than, than that. Are you a Jesus follower or not I think my great grandma used to call it churchins. Are you a churchin or are you Jesus follower? And churchins were just those that went on Sunday, but their behavior didn't reflect that.
Churchin, Krister.
Churchin.
Yeah.
Churchins.
Like that.
Yeah. Well, the scripture, like, this is how they're going to know you, by how well you love.
Yeah.
Like, right?
Yeah.
That's the essence of it in a lot of ways. Are you going to say something?
Well, I'm just thinking, like, because I got a zillion thoughts on this, but I'm just thinking when Jordan was like, that's why we try and respond to email promptly, or like, and I think that everybody's going to be different with this answer, right? Like, so just get still for a second, and like put your work self up on a screen in your mind, and have an honest conversation with yourself about, like, because maybe it's different for everybody. Maybe your personality is conflict averse, like you hate conflict, but you need to have that difficult conversation. And you have not connected that to your faith, but having difficult, important conversations that help people grow is a part of your faith. So maybe that's what you've got. I know for me, like, I know we joke a lot about, like, you shouldn't be different at work than you are different, but I definitely have a different work demeanor, like, because I get very task oriented. So as I'm here and I'm volunteering, I'm like, I don't know, everybody's fine, we're all great, we're having a great time. But at work, I'm like, I don't understand why that didn't get done. And it's a much more serious thing. So I have to check myself often with how I'm delivering feedback. Like, someone will send me something, hey, give me your feedback on this. I can't not give you 5 pages. Like, I am wired in such a way where I will give you a litany of things that I think should be different. But helping my team see, like, so that's my check, right? But like for somebody else, it may be like, I'm enabling a teammate. I'm picking up the ball. And honestly, they just need to drop the ball because they need to figure that out. It's going to be different for everybody. Or maybe you're someone who's just, pursuing that promotion or that title or that accolade. But like, get your work self in front of you for a second and be honest. Maybe you're lazy. I mean, let's just, be honest. Like, be honest enough with yourself and say, okay, God, I know I could respond to email faster. I know I could. I'm not really prioritizing work, and I'm taking advantage of the fact that I work from home. Or I know that I'm complaining. I know that I catch myself with coworkers. I'm just whining all the time. Or I've caught myself gossiping. It's going to be different for everybody. But if you want to know, like, invite God into that conversation and just do what you said. Like, hey, because that's going to be more Jesus-y than anything else, is you actually just working on things you need to work on anyway.
Yep. It's good to clarify, like, being Jesus at work is not just being super nice all the time. Like, Jesus disappointed people constantly. He said a lot of things that were honest in love, but were very hard to hear for people because he cared about them. He wanted to build them up.
Yep. And it's not always being harsh, but it's going to be different for each of you. Like, it's just figuring out, and it won't, also don't feel like you have to do like a massive makeover. Like, it's not like, okay, I heard the podcast about the Jesus at work thing. Now I'm going to like work on all my things. Just pick one thing. Just the next 3 months. Just respond to email promptly.
Show up on time to meetings.
Show up on time. It's crazy.
Yeah. That's been my thing
wild.
This year of like honoring people more, is like trying to show up on time to meetings.
I think honoring people's time is better than I'm hearing my brother's productivity voice.
Yes,
it's
yes,
like
yes.
check your email once a day in one slot, so that maybe is a bad example, but it's just honoring people's time. I think is what Jeremy is saying. Like, that's why you do it or fight to do it.
Yes. But even that's a great point. Like, stop looking at the things as things. Since I'm so task oriented, I can look at responding to email as a task I need to get done.
Right.
And if you don't respond to mine, I can't get my tasks done. But maybe reframing it to when someone's trying to have a conversation with me, especially if they're on my team or I'm leading them, like, that's honoring, listening to them. It's honoring their time. It's helping them work better.
Yep.
Even just reframing some stuff.
I want to I keep looking here because I don't have a watch on. I forgot my watch, but you can just see the watched hand. Last, just really cool story, and then we'll end the podcast. We've referenced him on this podcast maybe at some point before, anybody who goes to Northpoint knows him and sees him and loves him. But Jamal is a really cool story related to just workplace culture, because and we don't always get this right, but this is one of those examples where we have won, is Jamal was originally hired just to be an audio engineer. And backstory, like knowing his church experience growing up, the pastor running off with money, like that kind of thing.
Oh, wow.
And then Jamal was hired as a fill-in for our guy Joe, who finally needed some space after 10 years of doing every Sunday. I don't understand why, but Joe's amazing. But Jamal came in, and he has told me in hindsight that he came in like, this is not my thing. These are not my people. He would potentially describe himself as atheist or agnostic coming in. And he said that just through coming enough times, and eventually we were like, you play drums. Do you want to play drums with us? Enough times, it just began to change his heart. And it wasn't anything anybody said to him. He said it was being around the people. And it's really, really, it was such a win for us as a team to say, like, that's the ultimate goal is, like, you know, when you're at work, which for us behind the scenes at Northpoint, it's a lot of work. It's not necessarily like a, you know, butterflies and rainbows thing. It's like we are working, we are executing, we're putting together plans. And he stepped into that space, and, you know, we won because we were able just to be people and to love him and ask who he is and where he's from and all that kind of stuff. And his cool journey that he's been on, and now he's working on staff. He's our music director. And so, I mean,
and now he's asking that of other people.
Yeah.
Now I watched him last night with some students, and he's asking them, hey, where are you? What you got going on? What are you thinking? What are you feeling?
So cool.
Love it.
So cool. Yeah, he's an incredible dude. So anyways, just a cool story to end. I thought it does make an impact how we show up at work.
Perfect
So,
ending.
Boom. Hey, thank you guys. This was 90,000. This is wrapping up the series. And we'll be back for the next episode of Overtime soon. So see you next time.
It's a mystery. It's fun.
Yep.